the hero this holiday season. Get the gifts that won't go unused. Trailhead annual 4-day sock sale is going on now. It's a buy two and get one free on our entire stock of socks. The highest quality socks manufactured today are from Darn Tough, Farm to Feed, Smartwool. These socks last, are warm and comfortable, and are a gift everyone is excited to get. Don't miss the annual sock sale at the Trailhead T9 in Southgate Mall. Everyone needs socks, and you can be the holiday hero. Shop the Trailhead sock sale going on now, 4 days. Sale ends December 2nd.
Hey, this is Jeremy with your locally owned and operated Domino's. School's back in session, and we're excited for another great school year. We know what happens when school's open. Some people go to bed early, and some not so much. So if you like staying up late, keep in mind so does Domino's. We're delivering pizzas, pastas, and sandwiches till 2 a.m. or later. And our drivers are happy to deliver food while you're up late studying for your classes. So give us a call at 721-7610 on South Ave, 926-6411 on Reserve Street, or check us out online at Domino's.com.
Hey, David again with Garden City Plumbing and Heating. Did you know there are proactive steps you can take to ensure your drains aren't a source of frustration this holiday season? Proactive Drain Cleaning utilizes water jet technology to thoroughly clean the walls of your drains, getting rid of grease, grime, and buildup from years of use. Now, through December 24th, we're offering $50 off of drain cleaning services. Don't wait until a clog occurs or this offer expires to take advantage. Contact one of our drain technicians today, 728-5550.
Service shop, no matter what your rig needs. Simple oil change, brakes, new engine or transmission, Crawford's Auto will get the job done in big time and at a fair price. Chase Crawford's been working in vehicles for decades. His name is on the shop, and his reputation is second to none. So when the rig needs some work done, go to Crawford's. We find over West Broadway. Crawford's Automotive.
Americans waste 300 billion going for more than 100 work support missions. Next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, in hospital, near school, please turn your vehicle off.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Ellison, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories of memory on the theme Mythic Times. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at Top Hat Box Office, Doc and Rudy's, or Logjam Presents December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma. Tipping Point Stories. Begin.
His only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. It's playoff week in the state of Montana. The Grizzlies welcoming southeastern Louisiana. Well, the Bobcats get Albany. Yes, state capital of New York. The Great Danes, Albany, coming to town. Good afternoon. How are you? Happy post-Thanksgiving everything. We are very happy to be on board with all of you. It is Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and SWX Montana Television. Hope you are having a fantastic day. Thanks for spending some of it with us. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And this Saturday, this very Saturday, is their 7th annual snow day. Get there early. If you're going to the game, get on down 2904 West Broadway. Best sale of the entire year, one day only, this Saturday at Kurtz Polaris. If you'd like to call the show, you can do that. 329-1899 is the phone number. 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. And If you would like to listen live, you can do that on our website, 1029ESPN.com. You go there, you click the Listen Live tab. It's a stream, and it's available thanks to Opportunity Bank. Your local bank, your opportunity. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We start, as we do, the first hour of every show during football season, right up to the end of the year. The Montana Football Hour, presented by Lithia Ford. We are going to hear from both head coach Jeff Choate and head coach Bobby Houck of the Bobcats and Grizzlies as they get ready, coming off of a bye week for their first playoff game of the season, the first second round game in terms of a bye, hosting a second round game for a number of years in either school. And so we will get into that, their comments coming out, and we will take a look at obviously the teams that they're playing against, but more than that, more than the matchups, which we'll get into throughout the week. We'll get into kind of where these two teams at from a mentality standpoint as they are now in and looking forward and trying to shake off the high for Bozeman and the low for Missoula coming out of the Cat Grizz game at the end of the year. So we'll go through all of that, get a bunch of sound for you. In the next hour, I must say, when this came across my wire about 3 hours ago now, my jaw hit the floor. Chris Peterson retiring.
Resigning, stepped away.
Yes, resigning. Not even retiring, resigning as the head football coach at the University of Washington. This is major news. Jimmy Lake taking over for him. Jimmy Lake has many ties, particularly in Montana State, and there's many people in the state of Montana with ties to the University of Washington when it comes to football. And one of the people who's not doing any of it right now, friend of ours here on the show, Mike Kramer, former Montana State head coach, as well as Eastern Washington, which is where the now or soon-to-be current Washington head football coach Jimmy Lake got his coaching start. So we will go through this stuff with a guy who knows very, very well all the folks associated with this. But I was stunned about this Chris Peterson news and his resignation today, which will take effect following the Huskies bowl game, whatever that may be, coming on down the pike. So we'll get into that and get into it with Coach Kramer. We will also take a look around the Big Sky elsewise, particularly Weber State and Sacramento State, the two teams who they have come into play in this postseason. And of course, Monday Night Football. The great and mighty Seattle Seahawks versus the hapless and awful Minnesota Vikings playing Monday Night Football tonight. Come on. I'm just poking the bear here. We will get into...
people would think you were a lot smarter if you just gave credit where credit was due.
Yeah, they would, but then I wouldn't feel good about it. We will take a look at this line. 2.5 points for the Seahawks as they host the Vikings in the Pacific Northwest tonight. And, of course, we will have that game for you right here on ESPN Radio as soon as the show is over. Send you out to CenturyLink Field and Steve Rabel on the call tonight for the Seahawks-Vikings football game. So there you go. That is our show outlook. It is brought to us by Shine Auto Detailing. Go online, make your auto detailing appointment right now. MissoulaAutoDetailing.com. That's Shine Auto Detailing. Go Google it. Appointment made. Get your car protected for the winter months right now. Coulter, let's get going here. It is the Montana Football Hour. It is presented by Lithia Ford. By the way, happy post-Thanksgiving, man. I haven't seen you for like 5 days now. So it's nice to see you. You look great. You wore a dark color, which I assume means you were well fed over the last 4 days that we've had out there. I certainly didn't miss a meal. In fact, I only had one meal. It just lasted for the 4 days, and it was very enjoyable.
Weird Thanksgiving. First time I haven't been working on Thanksgiving. I thought I was looking forward to that. It was good. Not nearly as good as I expected, which I think says everything you need to know about me.
The inability to relax.
There's no point to it, I guess. I was just so bored. Thank God the Iron Bowl was good, because otherwise I would have been bored to tears. I cannot tell you how
great was the Iron Bowl.
I cannot tell you how boring I think like middle of the road Pac-12 football.
No.
It's crazy, man. Like the Apple Cup snoozer, Arizona State, man.
Loved it. What did you think about? What did you think about Ohio State, Michigan? Did you watch that at all?
Well, I mean, Ohio State's going to beat down everybody.
I mean, it was unbelievable. It was amazing to watch Michigan just not like. There's probably no scenario in which they win the football game, but to just over and over. I mean, to go false or offsides on a punt, and not get the ball back, and 2 plays later it's in the end zone. Just over and over these failings and mistakes that are just of course you're going to lose the football game. Can't kick the extra point after the first touchdown. That's when the game ended. Missed the extra point when you're up 7-0 on the opening drive of the game. To be up 7. Now you're only up 6-0. Now it's 7-6, and now we can all go. Done deal.
I thought Will Kane had a great line on his show today. He said, "There is no freak out like college football." And
So-
I mean, I get that Jim Harbaugh's never beaten Ohio State, but who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire that's better than Harbaugh?
I don't know.
What if your state of existence is just that you're never going to beat Ohio State because they straight up have better players than you and they have such a huge gap in how much better they are as a program than you? Michigan has not been actually truly nationally elite or relevant in 20 years, and Ohio State has been elite and relevant for all 20 of those years. The gap is huge.
Yes, that's fine. But all I'm saying,
there's no freak out like a college football
is that
freak out,
you
unless it's a
could be
David
if you were
Graff freak
Michigan.
out. So let's talk about the FCS. I watched a good amount of the FCS playoffs on Saturday,
Yep.
and I would say my number one impression was that it was an affirmation of what I hoped and believed to be true, and that is that Big Sky Conference is the best league in the country this year, and Montana and Montana State are certainly two of the six, and probably even a little bit better than that. I think two of the best 4 or 5 best teams in the country. And I think that the other two teams that are, I mean, I think North Dakota State, James Madison, Sac State are the only 3 teams I could say definitively that I've watched that are more intimidating than Montana and Montana State. And so I think that the 5th and 6th seeds where they're at in the playoffs is really good. I also think that given what I saw of the teams that played yesterday, I thought that they got really, really good draws. I think that the Albany team that's coming to Bozeman and the Southeastern Louisiana team that's coming to Missoula are both pretty good. I don't think they would have made the playoffs if they were in the Big Sky Conference.
You may be right about that. The other thing, though, too, I would put South Dakota State in there, though. Still, I know that they're down a quarterback, and that's significant. But I mean, they're playing Northern Iowa in the second round of the playoffs after Northern Iowa won pretty handily with San Diego. They beat down the Panthers without their quarterback 3 weeks ago now, and that was as good a team as I've seen, particularly on the game day game where they played with all hands on deck against North Dakota State. So I would put them in there as well. And obviously the one game that you and I got to watch Weber State live was an absolute just avalanche where they looked not good. They were beaten physically. They lost a bunch of players in the game. And you would go, oh, okay, well, what in the world happened here? To say that they're not on the same level, maybe not, but I think that Weber State is still certainly a team to be reckoned with in this postseason.
They are, but they're not scary, and I don't think that they're better than any of the 3 teams from the Big Sky Conference.
Okay. Well, they are one of the.
Oh, I know. I just think that they beat Sac handily, and you could say, oh, it's because Kevin Thompson went out. They're up by 2 touchdowns in that game when that injury occurred. Still, though, I still think that Weber State has the most glaring weakness. I mean, make no mistake, Weber State is in this position because of the vision and talent of their head coach.
Mm-hmm.
They only have 4 seniors that start. Like this was supposed to be a rebuilding year for their offensive line and their second. And they just happen to have 3 all-league defensive ends who are all awesome players. They have one of the best running backs in the country in Josh Davis. But that said, they are trying to reload and cultivate some talent in some of the other spots. So I just don't think that they're quite on par. I mean, I don't know. We're going to find out because they got themselves a tough draw in Kennesaw State. And this is going to be a prove-it game for Kennesaw State because I talked down on Kennesaw and said they were overrated all year long. And they looked really good on defense and offensively against Wofford. So, I don't know. I want to get into this topic with you after we hear a little bit of this sound from these 2 coaches because I do think that on one hand, there's a distinct advantage to having a bye, get a week off, you get to get healthy. But if you're a team like Montana, a rare team that's coming off a loss into a bye, or you're a rare team like Montana State that's coming off of the pinnacle win of your season going into a bye, and you have to play a team that's not ranked that much lower than you in the first round, like that already has a game. We've seen this in the Big Sky basketball tournament for 3 years in a row now. The 10 seed or somebody that has, before they reseeded the tournament, the 4-5 game bet the mortgage on the 5 seed because the 5 seed got to whip the 12 seed the day before.
Yeah.
And then the 4 seed, those 2 teams were probably only a game apart in the conference standings. and one team got to play a game and the other one didn't. But we saw Idaho State get beat by 40 in that situation. So I just wonder if there's a similar dynamic in this FCS playoff draw.
I don't know. I think it is a little bit different in the FCS playoffs because the bye is so much. It's not the next day. It's not like basketball where you got the feel of the gym and now you go out and you run it back again on a Tuesday and then on a Wednesday. And also, it's not a neutral site deal. It's a home game for those teams with the bye, so I think that's significant. The health that you deal with in football, also usually a disanalogy from basketball. Obviously, there's plenty of injuries that happen in basketball as well, but the idea of 2 weeks to get healthy is significant. And Bobby Hauck spent actually a lot of time talking about that very thing at the press conference today. Let's hear from both coaches. We'll start with Bobby Hauck and just his opening statement today discussing the fact that they're playing Southeastern Louisiana. Talked a little bit about that team. Southeastern Louisiana, by the way, in a crazy game, maybe the game in terms of entertainment value of the first round of the FCS playoffs, a 45-44 winner over Villanova. Villanova looked what seemed to be, or at least in the moment, the game-winning touchdown with about a minute left, 60 seconds left to go in the game. An egregious offensive pass interference call. I mean, just a phantom call erases what was a spectacular one-handed catch by the Villanova receiver. Ultimately, Sealy gets the stop and has a 1-point victory. By the way, they were up one because Villanova missed an extra point. Okay, so this is not all on the referees. You got to kick the doggone football through the uprights after you score a touchdown. But in any case, an unbelievable game, big scoring, huge offensive day for both teams. I think over 400 yards throwing, though, for the all-conference quarterback, Chasen Virgil, for the Lions. So he had a great day, and it was an entertaining game. But here you go. Here's Bobby Hauck talking about Southeastern Louisiana, and their game this week in Missoula.
Certainly, it's exciting to have playoff football back in Missoula. It's a big second-round game against Southeast Louisiana. I think our fans need to rise up this weekend, and playoff football is always fun. So we need a great Saturday in the stadium. Southeast Louisiana is obviously a really good football team. They had a great win against Villanova last weekend. It was fun to watch. It was an exciting game, and a lot of good plays on both sides of the ball. I think that Coach Cellphone and his staff do a really nice job of coaching their team. They seem to be a team that coaches plans to attack what you do well and take advantage of you rather than being a hey, we do what we do type outfit, which I think is you have to know what you're doing to be able to do it that way, and that seems to be their system. They're good up front on both sides of the ball, as well as being extremely skilled in all the skill position players. So it'll be a real test for us. They've got 20 transfer players on their two deep, which is interesting. They've done a good job of blending that group with their team, including 12 FBS players. So a lot of good-looking athletes on their film.
No doubt about that, and that includes Coulter, their quarterback, who was a starter at Fresno State, transferred
14 games.
Transferred to Southeastern Louisiana. But in watching this game, I think that what Coach Hauck said there is pretty undeniable. They got some athletes. I mean, they want to throw the football a lot. They're fast, but there's definitely. I mean, this looks like a really good football team. I frankly thought Villanova was going to win that football game coming into it, but after watching this team play, the way that they're coached, what Coach Sela, is, or Cefalo, in his history in the game, and particularly with quarterbacks, what did you say, Nick Foles and Blake Bortles, two of his prodigies from when
he was also at Tulane when they had that nice run of quarterbacks. J.P. Lossman, Sean King, Tom Savage, all those guys. I mean, Tulane is not a quarterback factory, but they actually were kind of. They were when he was there. So he knows how to coach quarterbacks. That's been sort of the story of Southeastern Louisiana. They are relatively new to the scene in terms of their competitiveness out of the Southland. That league was dominated for so long by Sam Houston State and Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin had some coaching changes as well as gotten some trouble, and that really limited They just their momentum, or I guess took away all their standing as a program because they've not been hardly any good at all. I mean, they lost to Southern Utah this year,
Right.
so they've really taken a fall. But Coach Alk mentioned the transfers. That's one thing that schools like Jacksonville State, Southeastern Louisiana, Sam Houston State, Stephen F. Austin, because of their location, because of the conference they play in, because of previous familiarity with recruiters, and because of just sort of their being academically middle of the road, they can take a lot more transfers. It's also, I mean, let's just be honest, it's way easier to convince a kid from the South to stay in the South than it is to convince him to come to Montana or Colorado or something like that. So they get a bunch of guys that are washed out of not just SEC schools, but also, AAC schools, or, I mean, MAC, whatever. That whole region, they get a lot of drop downs as well. But it's a school that's pretty young in terms of being competitive on the FCS level, but this is their third playoff appearance since 2013. I mean, don't look now, but Montana's only got that many as well. This will be Montana's fourth playoff appearance in that amount of time. So in that realm, sort of even playing field, Sila's only ever won 2 playoff games in their program's history. Montana's their 24th playoff appearance overall, though. And Bobby Houck, he definitely had a big smile when asked about the playoffs being back in Missoula, because this is definitely where Montana wanted to be. He's talked about maybe being ahead of the game a little bit, but make no mistake, this is where the Grizz should be. And here's a tease for you. We're putting together an all-decade team for Montana and Montana State that will release sometime in the next month here at SkylineSportsMT.com. But just go. We've had this long-standing debate. What happened to Grizz football? Was it the scandal, or was it the several coaching changes, or was it a pure lack of talent? I'll tell you this. Montana has had some of their greatest players in program history at positions like wide receiver and linebacker and defensive line over the last 10 years. They also had a gigantic drop-off on the offensive line and the specialists. That was the part that was crazy. I was trying to pick a kicker from the last 10 years that deserves all-decade recognition. And, I mean, there's been, don't get me wrong, some okay, solid guys, but not guys that are like, man, that guy's a historic player.
Right.
Not Dan Carpenter. So
right.
It's interesting to see where Montana's at. But make no mistake, this Montana team has the talent to be one of the best in the country, period, straight out, flat out, right now. So this will be an interesting matchup on Saturday. But I guess what I meant to say when we were talking off the top about just the teams that I watched, not necessarily to debate who's better out of the Big Sky teams, but was just to say that I think that our theory and our talking point about North Dakota State, then James Madison, then this clump of Big Sky and Missouri Valley and maybe 1 or 2 CAA teams, and then everybody else, it was just absolutely affirmed to me, because I agree. I thought the Villanova and Southeastern Louisiana looked pretty good. I thought Albany looked pretty good. But they just look pretty good. Like, they don't look that any better than Eastern Washington or Portland State to me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think? You watched some of the teams.
No, I mean, I thought some of the athleticism was there for those teams. I thought, clearly if you're looking at if you're looking at the Villanova Southeastern Louisiana game, you go, well, who's playing defense around here?
Right.
And so that's obviously glaring. But also it's a style of play thing where those things matched up well. Albany, by the way, a 42-14 demolition of Central Connecticut, and it was 7-7 at halftime. Then they scored 28 points unanswered in the third quarter, did Albany. And so the Great Danes heading for Bozeman on Saturday with a very convincing victory over Central Connecticut State. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. And we got some sound here from Jeff Choate. He's talking about the bye week and then also last year's playoff experience getting into this one. So here you go. Here's Jeff Choate just regarding having the week off.
Yeah, I thought our guys really, we came in on Saturday. Our guys had good energy. This morning they had good energy. And so, now it's all about preparation. Now it's all about digging in on the opponent, making sure that we can go play fast. I think there's a tendency sometimes to, you're in the playoffs and it's the second season. You reinvent yourself. That's something you got to guard against. You don't all of a sudden put too much in for an opponent, not be able to operate at a high level. So really right now it's about us finding out how we can best attack this team and do it in a way that's not going to require too much thinking from our guys.
And that is a key, right? I mean, that any coach will tell you, any player will tell you too. I mean, it's sometimes it's not about skill or ability or whatever. It's about just having it be that innate reaction. Go play fast. Let's put a game plan together, run downhill, and go see what we can do. And Montana State, make no mistake, they're going to be the physically superior team to Albany when Albany goes to Bozeman on Saturday. So if you can unleash that, a.k.a. simplify the game plan and just go play football, you got to feel confident if you're Jeff Choate in your guys' ability to win the one-on-one battles in general.
And when you get to the end of conference play and you are two of the schools that will always have target on their backs no matter what their standing in the season is, Montana State's always going to get the best shot from a lot of teams in the league. That's always been the case, especially with the metro schools like Sac State and Portland State. But when you get to the playoffs, actually, because you're fresh, because you're Montana State has only ever played one CAA team ever. That was New Hampshire in the 2011 playoff. So they have no crossover whatsoever with teams from that league. They've played some Northeastern teams recently, like Bryant and Wagner, but they're not on par with Albany. But Montana State, what Jeff Choate says, it resonates even more with me because not only do you not have to reinvent yourself, in fact, doing exactly what you do is your biggest advantage. Doing it and doing it well, but also, you have the element of surprise because this team has 5 days to prepare for you. Yeah. They haven't been watching. When a team knows that you're coming up on their schedule and they're playing a different team that's already played you, they start making notes on you and stuff in league play. So by the time 8th and 9th weeks of the season roll around, you have tendencies that everybody in the league knows about. These teams aren't in the league. So now I think both Montana and Montana State have such unique styles. That's why I think the way that the bracket was seeded is actually too bad. Because I think that if Montana State could play foreign opponents for as long as possible, that would be their biggest advantage, is how unusual the styles of football that they play are.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to if all the seeds hold, you're going to have two Big Sky Conference teams playing against each other in the quarterfinal round. Jeff Choate also was asked about just last year's playoff experience. Obviously, the Bobcats got a playoff win at home and then went on the road and, found out how big the gap was between them and NDSU, which, by the way, it pretty much is for everybody in NDSU. But here you go, Jeff Choate, just talking about that playoff experience and how that might play into this year.
I think every year that you get an opportunity to do this, you learn something. And so, I made some mistakes last year, and I think it's not so much the second round game. It was the fact that we kind of eked in, so to speak. We had to win out down the stretch, and we got a first round win, and then it was like, I forgot, hey, we got finals, we got all this other stuff. And so our kids were kind of distracted, I think. So having a better plan going into this, as far as last week was about three things: about family, about school, about taking care of your body. Sharpening the saw, worrying about fun. This week we got to focus on school. We got finals next week, and so that can obviously be something that can distract young men. The weather is a factor to a certain degree this time of year, but the ability to just compartmentalize it is something that I learned.
That's interesting, actually, for him to talk about, hey, we're in there, we're in full football mode, and all of a sudden now we got finals in the second week of the playoffs, which, by the way, isn't only a Montana State football issue. Any team that's playing at this time has got to have the same kind of deal going on that way. But if you are considering, especially with a bye, hey, we can create the space now to really attend to the things that have to be attended to, and then lock in to the football side of things. And if you're still playing after finals are over, let's go. You got nothing. You got nothing going on, man. It's straight football 24/7. How great would that be for the teams, that do make it through into that second weekend after the bye?
I was talking to some people at Montana State about this, and I don't think this is uncommon at a lot of schools, but particularly engineering schools where so much of it's hands-on and it's based on projects. I even asked one of the players this last week. They said, actually, especially when you're older, when you're junior and senior, it's way harder the week before finals because you have to wrap up all your projects and stuff, and then you just got to turn them in.
Right.
So this will probably actually be the hardest week. Next week when they actually have finals, a lot of their guys are probably going to be, that's not going to be as stressful, but there's varying academic standards at schools, especially in the FCS. And make no mistake, Montana State's a above average hard school. It's harder than a lot of schools in the league and the country, so it is a real factor, but I think that just even having just experience dealing with it will be advantageous for the kids.
We'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll continue with the Montana Football Hour Talking about these two schools in light of the Cat Grizz football game and where they are at now, 9 days removed from that game, the highs and the lows of it, trying to get back to even for both schools and how they're able to do that and what the coaches have to say about it as well. So all that coming up as we continue in the Montana Football Hour, presented by Lithia Ford. Right now, get 0% for 72 months on the 2019 Ford F-150 at Lithia Ford in Missoula. The Ford F-150 makes tough tasks look easy, whether it's working on the job or heading out on a weekend of recreation. Also, check out the all-new Ranger, tested under more extreme conditions than you will likely ever encounter. Set a date for your next adventure. Your Ranger is ready to get you there. Lithia Ford, across from Super Walmart on Brooks, has a huge inventory of new and used cars and trucks. Visit lithiafordmissoula.com for more information. Search new and used inventory, financing specials, and get yourself a Lithia Ford today. Lithia Ford is an official sponsor of the Montana Grizzlies and Tootell Nuanez Montana Football Hour.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit 6, and online at SelwayArmory.com.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Refresh yourself at your local Town Pump. Get a 32-ounce fountain drink for $1.19. While you're there, grab a couple of everything bagels in the deli, 2 for $5. Town Pump, so convenient and right down the road from you.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
The biggest season in sports is shifting into overdrive, and the Desperado Sports Tavern has the fuel you need to make it to the finish line. By now, you've heard that the Despo serves the best wings around, but did you know they have a full menu with burgers, nachos, chicken strips, sandwiches, cheese sticks, and even steaks? Fill your tank, then wash it down with an ice-cold beverage or two. Keep your head in the game with 32 HD TVs and room for the whole crew. The Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
This is Tom Scared for the Portland. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour for children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to BorgenProject.org. The BORGEN
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, in collaboration with the Roxy Theater, invites you to Worldview, Cultures on Display, a series of films which highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts around the world. The fourth and final film in the series, Exit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the infamous, shadowy British graffiti street artist Banksy, who has literally left his mark on cities throughout the world. This screening will be free and open to the public Monday, December 9th, 7 p.m. at the Roxy.
ESPN Missoula.
Good afternoon, Brian Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. Two teams from thousands of miles away will make the cross-country trip to Montana this weekend for the FCS playoffs to take on the Montana Grizzlies and Montana State Bobcats, who are both fresh off a bye.
Southeastern Louisiana will travel 2,235 miles from Hammond, Louisiana to Missoula, Montana to take on the number 6 Grizz. Missoula rallied from a 17-point deficit to squeak out a 45-44 win over number 8 Villanova in the first round of the FCS playoffs.
The Lions scored 17 straight points in the third quarter to tie the game at 31, then took the lead for good with 2.5 minutes to go in the game and earned the second playoff win in program history. in the school's. It was the school's third ever playoff appearance. Or the first team All Southland Conference quarterback Chase Virgil. He threw for 445 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Lions move to 8-4 this season. Montana, they're 9-3, entering a FCS record 24th playoff appearance.
University of Albany will also travel more than 2,200 miles from the New York State capital city to Bozeman, Montana, to play the number 5 Montana State Bobcats. The Great Danes of the Colonial Athletic Association turned a 7-7 halftime tie into a 42-14 drubbing of number 17 Central Connecticut State on Saturday.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Welcome back. Tootell Nuanez. It's the Montana Football Hour. Smack in the middle of it. Great to be with all of you. ESPN Radio in Western Montana and across the state on SWX Montana Television. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Go there this Saturday. It's their 7th annual snow day. Get a free lunch if you're there and save a ton of money getting everybody on your Christmas list checked off. That's at Kurtz Polaris Saturday. It is the Montana Football Hour. It is presented by Lithia Ford of Missoula. And Coulter, we talked about a lot of things in the first segment. We want to talk about something specific here in the second one, and that is this. We sort of, I don't know if we speculated, but we discussed, we had an open conversations, particularly on Monday and Tuesday of last week, about what the game meant, what the Cat Grizz game meant. Good for Montana State, bad for Montana, and all of the fallout of that. I want to now focus that into this week, because these teams now have to have arrived at a point where they have moved on from this by and large, both for both schools, because they both now not only know that they're playing on Saturday, but they have an opponent. I mean, since Saturday night, these coaches, these players have known, okay, we have somebody in the site. It's kind of odd to be on a bye and not know who it is that's coming up. You know, you sit there, okay, it's one of these two teams, but you can't really dial in, and now they can. And I think the bye was really important for both teams. Clearly, that was something that was talked about. We heard Jeff Choate talk about it in the first segment. But also just from a mental, emotional standpoint, if I can say it like that, how do you reset from being on the mountain summit if you're the Bobcats, and how do you dig yourself out of the doldrums if you're the Grizzlies? And make no mistake, I mean, they were that was more than just a loss. I mean, that was an absolute catastrophe for the Montana Grizzlies in a lot of different ways. And yet here they are, the 6th seed, and awaiting Southeastern Louisiana on Saturday. So this is a question that was posed to Bobby Houck. We'll hear what he says and respond to that.
What was your approach last week to get your team mentally prepared for this week with the 2 weeks off and to overcome the disappointment of the rivalry game?
Oh, we just went back to work. I mean, that's what you do. Win or lose, you go back to work and get ready. So I think it was, with our health being as bad as it was and is, I think that the ability to not play on Saturday was great for us. So it would have been hard to limp out there last Saturday. So, a little bit of practice, some lifting, a couple of days off, probably really good for us.
By the way, he touched on this a couple of times, just how crucial from a health standpoint for this team this bye week was, and you can talk about whether it's Sammy Akem, who, whether he's going to be available or not, we don't know. Seems less likely rather than more, but certainly Dalton Sneed and plenty of others could use the time. My question to you is this, Coulter. I'm not asking you what you think Bobby Houck did or should do. I'm asking you for you. If you are the head coach of a team that just got, beat down in the rivalry game that you have, and you are in a playoff situation like this, what do you do? I mean, do you address it? Do you try and maintain some sense of levity? Do you try and bring the hammer down and go, this is never going to happen again, let's go take it out on the next person? Do you just take kind of a sober and sort of serious view of it? Is there a right way to go about it when it comes to not what you say, but the tone of what you say?
Well, I've heard for 2 weeks, one of the most fascinating parts, this is the first time that we've had a really lopsided result in the Cat Grizz game that then has resulted in both teams still making the playoffs and getting by.
Right.
So therefore, then it ruminated around the state. I mean, it's the only thing that anybody's talking about for 2 weeks. And I thought that in itself was an interesting social phenomenon. And it's amazing how much emotion's behind this game. You know, so many of the people we talk to are passionate about one side of the rivalry or the other. It's hard for them to remove the emotion of what they think. But I think that one thing that people's got to understand is that it can be two-way. Montana State whipped Montana, but it's also not the end of the world for Montana. I think that the way you handle it is the way that they've handled this entire season, and that is the art of crafting a great season and trying to concentrate on what's in front of you. I think you don't really talk about it in any form or fashion. I think you just concentrate on. I think you tell your players, hey guys, the only 3 times we've lost is when we haven't played our best football, and when we have played our best football, we've destroyed people, including the number 3 team in the country 2 weeks ago. So let's just play our best football. I think that's how you approach it if you're any team in this tournament. I think that's the most successful way to approach it. Play your best football, and if you get to a point in the tournament where your best football is not good enough, so be it.
Now let's go to the other side of this then, Coulter. Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Again, I don't want you to tell me what you think Jeff Choate said. I want to hear what you would say to Montana State when you are coming off of a gigantic win, both in terms of the score and in terms of just the scope of what the win means. And also your season's not over. You are trying to take the next step and have, in a lot of ways, into being a seeded playoff team now this year. But also have to continue to, as Mitch Brott said, not think you're pretty good. You got to believe that you can get better and that you still have to go out and earn it every day and all that stuff. But it would be easy after that game to go, Albany, let's go. Go whoop them. And then all of a sudden not be ready for an opponent that comes in. So how do you get your team hungry again?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a matter of them being hungry as much as I think that you just have to say, all right, boys, we have played like our backs have been shoved against the wall every game in November for 3 years in a row. Only 2 of those games have actually been in the postseason, and one of them was in Fargo. I don't think you have to go into this much detail, but I think you just have to say, what's more of a backs against the wall? I mean, this has become Jeff Choate gets into his he gets the talking points and the sayings that he loves. For a couple weeks there, it was, you're not the man you were yesterday. It's the man you are today and the man you're going to be tomorrow. He said it a million times over the last couple weeks. But the one thing that they've been harping on forever, for 3 years, don't back a Bobcat into the corner. There's no more corner. It doesn't matter if you're the highly favored 5 seed playing at home against a team from 2,500 miles away. If you lose, it's over. There's
right.
no more. There's no other corner, and it would be humiliating for them to lose on their home field after they surge down the stretch. So I think that you just, I mean, the rallying cry for the Cat Grizz game of, hey, you guys are the survivors. You guys are the ones that made it. I mean, the 5th-year seniors that are the cornerstones of this team are the guys that signed with Rob Ash and play for Jeff Choate. And I think you say, boys, this is your last chance. Leave a legacy. And the thing is, it's such a different historical perspective because Montana is scratching and clawing to get back to where they once were. And that's such an arduous task to try to catch up to yourself. Like the shadow of what the monster the Grizz were is omnipresent. If the Cats win this game and the next game, it's the best run in 35 years in Montana State. Leave a legacy. That's what you tell your players. You say, hey, you boys have already went from October to forget to November to remember. What are you going to do for me in December? And let it ride. Yeah. And I think that just because of the guys that they do have, the leadership they do have, I think that those, especially those 5th-year senior Montana guys that play for the Cats, they're just going to leave it all out on the field. They're not going to go down.
Yeah. Take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll hear more from both these head coaches and continue to assess where these two teams are at. As again, Montana hosting Southeastern Louisiana and Montana State hosting Albany. Both those games, by the way, kicking off at 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, Saturday afternoon. Quick break. We'll be back. The Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford. We'll be back right after this. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and their urge to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you are looking for. Right now, the Silver Slipper is your football headquarters with a free shuttle to and from every Grizz home game, 56 televisions to watch sports on, drink specials every day, a full liquor store, Tarantino's Pizzeria, and the friendliest staff in town. The Silver Slipper has all you need to watch your favorite games. Visit thesilverslipperlounge.com for more info. Stop by today and see why Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best-kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brook.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
Ready, set, go. Have you looked at the calendar? It's time. Get those high-interest credit cards. Apply for a holiday loan from Farmer State Bank. Holiday loans feature low monthly payments that are easy to budget for. On approval, you'll have the cash you need for a holiday to remember. Whether it's shopping, travel, whatever. Get the details and apply today at Farmer State Bank. Or Montana Bank in 1807. As a lender, remember FDIC.
If you're looking for a charming neighborhood hideaway, come into Katie O'Keefe's. Located in the corner of the Stevens Center, Katie's has an inviting atmosphere with ample parking in a location that's easy to get to and hard not to love. With drink specials every night of the week, including Tequila Tuesdays and Whiskey Wednesdays, offering $3 premium cocktails. Katie O'Keefe's is the welcoming, warm hangout you've been looking for. Come in to Katie O'Keefe's, where the drinks are always cold and the people are always friendly.
At Florence Coffee Company, it's time to treat yourself with one of our limited-time holiday favorites. Taste the cookies in the kitchen with our gingerbread man latte, or tap into our creamy maple brulee. You can always rely on our classic eggnog, or pep up with our peppermint melt-away. Hot, blended, or even iced, our limited-time holiday favorites are here through December only. Come to any Florence Coffee location or go to FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of gas by idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Tell Us Something, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories from memory on the theme Tipping Point. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at the Top Hat Box Office, Rock and Rudy's, or Logjam Presents December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma Tipping Point Story. Begin.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
It's playoff football. Playoffs 24 teams now. Did you know that? We'll get onto that. And both teams coming to the state of Montana, coming from a long ways away. It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Get there this Saturday, December 7th. It's their 7th annual snow day, one day only, this Saturday at Kurtz Polaris. If you would like to follow along on the social medias, please do. On Twitter and Instagram, at 1029ESPN, at 1029ESPN. You can also check us out on Twitter, Coulter and myself, at Gus Tootell and at Skyline Sports MT there. This is Montana Football Hour. It is presented by Lithia Ford of Missoula and Coulter. Let's talk about these two teams that are coming here to Montana, where they're coming from. Albany is coming from Albany, New York. Southeastern Louisiana is coming from, is it Hammond?
Hammond, Louisiana.
Both of them right in the neighborhood of 2,300 miles away. That's not air miles, that's driving. But look, it's well outside the 400-mile range of busing. Okay, let's say that. Okay. Albany is under more snow than about anybody in America right now.
Plus,
yeah.
in the
So
capital city region.
And Southeast Louisiana, they're coming from 75 and nice. Jeff Choate was asked about having a foreign opponent, a.k.a. not a Big Sky opponent, what it's like to just play a team you haven't seen before. Here's what he had to say.
If I had the ability to, I would. I mean, I just don't. I'm not connected. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy. I've never been to the stadium. Most of the guys that play for Albany have probably never been to the state of Montana. So there's not a lot of crossover, you know. And I think if it was a team from the Southeast, I could reach out to some of my connections down there. Team from the Midwest, team from the West. And, but, you know, there's certainly not a lot of familiarity. But I do think stylistically there's some similarity. And so I think that, you know, you are who you are on film after 13 games is what we've got to look at on them. And so it's, you know, it's going to come down to nothing that somebody tells you about their style or any of those types of things is probably going to have a huge impact on our preparation.
Do you think, Coulter, that it's a disadvantage for teams in the Big Sky Conference and the Missouri Valley as well, who get relatively so much more and, quote, better coverage television-wise than these other schools do? Where you could go check out a Root Sports, you game.
Could, but you're not.
Well, I mean,
Albany,
of course you could.
The difference in resources is so stark that Greg Cattuso, who we'll hear from later on this week, was talking about how their coaches were shoveling the field. Jeff Choate calls a facilities guy and a team of people going plow Bobcat Stadium every single day that they're going to practice with snow. So that shows you just the difference in resources and things like that.
But, I mean, what does that have to do with watching film and its availability?
No coach is watching a television. Period. Point blank. Period. Never. They're only watching the 22 look from the birds up.
Get behind it, get to the side of it, and see what the formations are. That's
in their own routine.
I mean, I'm not asking them to listen to the commentary. I'm just saying in terms of the clarity of what's going on.
They are not. At no point has anybody from Albany ever heard of Root Sports, let alone. These guys are so stuck in their own world, man. You got to think about how crazy football is. They're not watching Root Sports Northwest. They're not. I mean, they're uploading from their database of film, and that's what they're watching.
Okay.
Period. I think that there is an advantage when it comes to like reporting. Like if we were to say right now definitively the injury status of Grizz and Bobcat players on this radio show or in print on Skyline Sports, that's an advantage because there is no injury report really from Albany, although they do have there's a newspaper there, and I mean they get covered. I mean they have a beat writer.
I would think there'd be a newspaper in Albany. It's the capital of the state.
But I mean there's a newspaper in Sacramento, and they don't write about
all I'm saying is that there's so little coverage in general, whether it's visual, whether it's print, whether it's whatever, and then there's a lot more, relatively speaking, at the FCS, and you don't run into this at the FBS level. Well, you do in some of the mid-major, but at the Power 5 conferences, there is multiple beat writers for every school in all 65 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I was thinking about this actual dynamic. It's actually funny because even with like if and when, say Montana and Montana State were both to make the quarterfinal or the semifinals, and say you had North Dakota State versus Montana State and James Madison versus Montana, I think those are the four most reputable FCS programs in the country, and it would still be sort of mysterious. Like the Cats have played North Dakota State recently, and there's some staff crossover and things like that. That would be a little bit of a familiar opponent. But the Grizz, it would be almost just as blind as Southeastern Louisiana. Whereas, like you're saying, on the FBS level, people in the SEC have opinions on people in the Pac-12, even if they haven't played them, because all you have to do, like that sort of stuff. I do think they probably watch college football tonight. You know, they do watch, like, just give me the updates of what happened in the top 25. It's just totally different than seeking out a relatively hard to find.
I don't know. It just seems like watching something in HD as opposed to grainy, handheld, whatever. I understand. You're sending off. They all have their own 3 games, whatever they send to each other, and they share the thing. I understand. By the way, you asked what I thought was like a sort of a, I don't know, I didn't know what the answer was going to be about this by Bobby Houck, but he actually spent some time on this. I thought it was interesting and got back once again to the importance of the bye. So here is Coulter asking Bobby Houck about playoff expansion. Used to be 16 teams, now it's 24 at the FCS.
Do you have any opinion on the expansion of the playoff field to 24 teams? Because for so long it was 16 teams.
Well, I think that this, if I were to retroactively go back to former life here, I think it would have been real beneficial to us. You know, this last Saturday off was good for us. I think it would have helped us before, certainly. I also think that in terms of if we never get to the national championship game, having it played with the 3-week break would have behooved our performance to be a little bit better. You know, in the old days, we had to play on Saturday, work all night, Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, and get on a plane Tuesday morning and fly back there. It wasn't great for game preparation. So, we can get good enough. I think this is great for us. If we can, it doesn't matter.
So that's pretty interesting, like the value of having the bye week. And again, I do think it's different from, you know, the basketball side of things, where the momentum that you come in with is more than offset, it seems to me, by the reality of health first and foremost, of just getting ready. And also, not everybody, in fact, almost nobody, right, has a game like the Montana State Bobcats and the Montana Grizzlies have as the last game of their season. Win, lose, or draw, it's an emotional investment with ramifications that you just can't go to sleep and wake up and move on from. And it doesn't matter what the result of that game. It doesn't matter how it goes. Every single coach and every single player that participates in it has to deal with what happened, good or bad for them, in a way that is as productive as it can be moving into what is now the playoffs, and having a space of time, and not to mention Thanksgiving, and you go home and you get all that stuff. It really matters, man. Like, what's the best way to finish writing a paper? Leave it. Go away, come back, and get to the end of it. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, it's kind of there for you. That bye week is huge, and obviously, if you don't have that bye week, I think it does make it hard.
Some of the coming back from injury stuff is a little bit overblown, because if you have if you're truly injured, the timeline is what the timeline is. I do not expect Sammy Kim to play on Saturday. Now, that said, Dalton Sneed, who has been playing, a week off is huge for him, just from a rehab standpoint, rest and rehabilitation, all that sort of stuff. So the guys like Isaiah Fonse for Montana State, I mean, Fonse has been banged up all year, but more time off just equals more juice. So that part does. I want to ask you this. I think that one of the best ways to flush the rivalry game result is to watch other games and just realize, wow, everybody's playing. And like to see a team like Southeast Missouri State, who won a couple playoff games last year, give up 300 yards rushing to Illinois State and look completely unprepared, and see their great seniors like Zach Hall, the reigning Buck Buchanan Award winner, disappointed. I mean, I think that reaffirms to you, like, hey, this is go time, and we are the fortunate team that doesn't have to play this week. What do you think?
I think there's a lot to that. I mean, when I say, getting around family, like, I mean, if you love football, like, what's the best thing about Thanksgiving? Oh, you get the meal, you get to sit around with the people that you like, and you get to watch some games, man, And I think there is a great benefit to that for all these kids in that respect, from a mental one. And it would have been very, very difficult for either team. It is difficult for either team to go in. Look, Montana State, coming off a win, playing Incarnate Word last year, won the football game, but they didn't play their best game. They didn't play their best game against Incarnate Word. They played a good game and got the thing done. And Incarnate Word,
they were also staring the giant in the face.
Yeah.
Like they knew they were banged up coming out of Montana, and they didn't play certain guys. They didn't play Derek Marks. They didn't play Bryce Sturck,
right?
Because they knew North Dakota State was upcoming. It was a risk for sure, to be certain.
But anyway, my point is like to have the bye, to move NDSU on down the schedule a couple of weeks out, and get rolling is good. And I think this is going to be very positive for both teams, as long as you use it right and you don't dwell on the past, which is hard not to do, win or lose, coming out of the kick. It is the Montana Football Hours presented by Lithia Ford, and it comes to a close. We'll have another one for you. Well, how about next Monday? Of course, we're going to be talking about these games all week long, so fear not. But we're happy to bring this to you once again. On the other side of the break, our buddy Mike Kramer, former Montana State head coach, among other things, going to talk to us about the really surprising news coming down today that Chris Peterson has resigned as the head coach of the Washington Huskies. He is going to take on an administrative leadership role, at least for now. There's already mystery or rumors brewing, but what is not a mystery is his successor, Jimmy Lake, who played for Mike Kramer and then also coached under Mike Kramer at Eastern Washington, is where he started his
coaching
coaching
Mike Kramer
career.
at Montana State as well. So he's got deep Big Sky ties. He's a Spokane native, played at EWU, started his coaching career at EWU. DB's coach at Montana State, the head coach at Washington in less than 15 years. That's pretty impressive.
That's the express lane for sure. So we will talk with Coach Kramer about the soon-to-be new head man at the University of Washington, Jimmy Lake, right after this. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and their urge to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you're looking for. Right now, Silver Slipper is your football headquarters with a free shuttle to every home Grizz game, 56 TVs to watch sports on at the bar, drink specials every single day, a full liquor store, and Tarantino's Pizzeria. They also have the friendliest staff in town. Silver Slipper has all you need to watch your favorite games. Silver Slipper is online at silverslipperlounge.com. Stop by today and see why the Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brook.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. The 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes, shocks, wheels, and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1950.
On Russell, across from the fairground.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula, in collaboration with the Roxy Theater, invites you to Worldview, Cultures on Display, a series of films which highlights and celebrates the unifying power of the visual arts around the world. The 4th and final film in the series, Exit Through the Gift Shop, chronicles art by the infamous, shadowy British graffiti street artist Banksy, who has literally left his mark on cities throughout the world. This screening will be free and open to the public Monday, December 9th, 7 p.m. at the Roxy.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work? Not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer. Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colter Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. 2 teams from thousands of miles away will make the cross-country trip to the state of Montana this weekend for the FCS playoffs. The The Grizz and the Bobcats will be hosting fresh off of a couple of byes. Southeastern Louisiana, they're heading 2,235 miles from Hammond to Missoula to take on the number 6 Grizz. Sela rallied from a 17-point victory to squeak out a 45-44 win over number 8 Villanova in the first round of the FCS playoff.
The Lions scored 17 straight points in the third quarter, tied the game at 31, then took the lead for good with 2.5 minutes to go in the game, toward the second playoff win in program history. In the school's third ever playoff appearance, first-team All-Southland quarterback Chase Vigil threw for 445 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Lions moved to 8-4 this season. Montana's 9-3, entering its 24th playoff appearance.
The University of Albany will also travel more than 2,200 miles from New York State capital to Bozeman to play number 5 Montana State. The Great Danes of the CAA turned a 7-7 halftime time into a 42-14 drubbing of number 17 Central Connecticut State. Albany redshirt freshman quarterback Jeff Undercuffler tied an FCS playoff single-game record by throwing 6 touchdown passes, including during a 28-point third quarter. Last week marked Albany's first FCS playoff win.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Ford.
Some days are good, others are great, and when you get to talk to people you like, usually they're pretty great, such is the case for us here. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hour number 2 coming at you. Great to have you on board on ESPN Radio and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Thanks for being there and being with us. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Drop by Kurtz Saturday. All day, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., even a little earlier than that. It's their 7th annual snow day, the biggest sale of the entire year, one day only at Kurtz Polaris. If you missed anything in the first hour of the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast available wherever you get your podcast, and it is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. We go now to the Range Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in former Montana State head coach and, in this instant, former Eastern Washington head coach to talk to us about the surprise coaching change at the University of Washington. One of our favorites, Mike Kramer, on the line. Mike, thanks so much for being with us. How are you this afternoon?
Well, it's great to be with you on a playoff week edition of Monday football before the playoff on Saturday. Should be fun.
It is going to be fun, and we could touch on some of that stuff as well, but we wanted to start in Seattle, Washington, with the surprise resignation of Chris Peterson and Jimmy Lake being immediately announced. It's almost like they had a plan in place here, Coach Kramer, if I'm understanding it correctly, to get Jimmy Lake the job. He's a guy who played for you, who coached, who started his coaching career with you at Eastern Washington. For people who don't know about Jimmy Lake, tell us about this guy. What do you think about this? Have you even been in contact with him about this?
Well, no, Jimmy's done a really nice job without any of my tutelage for a long time. So, Jimmy came to us in the summer of 1994-5 in there, and Ken Emil, who was coaching at our youth football camp out in Sheen at Eastern Washington, was coaching the All-Star game in Spokane. And he came out one night to, just see how things were going, and we were sitting around. I'll just tell you the truth now. I don't have to worry about it. We're sitting around drinking a couple of beers, and he was going, "Hey, Kramer, how come you guys didn't recruit this kid out of North Central High School?" I said, "Well, we wanted to recruit this guy." And I started talking about him, and he goes, "No, you're talking about the wrong guy." He goes, I said, "Who?" And he says, "Jimmy Lake." I said, "Who?" And when Ken got done talking to me, he's a former WSU linebacker and an excellent high school coach in his own right, and a guy who had played at Eastern. I thought, man, there's really something here. Well, we had a scholarship available. So I cleaned up my act and went home. And about 6 o'clock at night, I ran down the phone, and I got hold of his mom, who got hold of Jimmy at the All-Star game, and they were at the end of practice. That night, they got done with dinner, and I talked with him on the phone. He was on a payphone. I talked to him for about an hour about Eastern football, that our scholarship had come available, and that we were going to offer him a full scholarship. And because it was June, I couldn't go see him. Liable. There's no home visit, no fly you in, no take you to this restaurant and that restaurant and let you have a good time. It was like, Jim, we've got an opportunity, and I'm going to offer you a full scholarship to come out and play for us. Because Ken Emil, a guy who I respect intimately, says, "You are a great player. sight unseen. So no video, no evaluation, no sitting around with 5 or 6 guys wringing our hands about whether we should or should not recruit this guy. And from the first day he came to camp, you could tell, number one, this guy's something different. He's different. He was in a great recruiting class, a really good group of kids we had at Eastern. I was at the very start of my coaching career there, and we were trying to outfit ourselves for the future. And he fit in right away. And my gosh, he just had such an outstanding career for us in the back end with Mo Perigo at safety. The 1997 team was a kind of an orchestration of how those guys were on defense, along with Derek Stry, Chris Scott on the inside, and a whole bunch of other guys who played really good defense. But the catalyst for all that was a great senior class, but that one junior, Jimmy Lake, who was an integral part of our success. Well, lo and behold, a year later, Jimmy gets done, and he spends his last year coaching for us as a student assistant coach, getting his degree. And then I go to Montana State. And Paul Wolf gets the job, and Jimmy is actually selling rings for Jostin. And Paul got hold of him and said, "Hey, I think you should come out and coach for me." And Jimmy had gotten tired of, being in the real life, and he said, "Okay." He gave coaching a chance. And I think, fellas, the one thing about Jimmy Lake that people really have to understand, the guy spent a year out of coaching, so it isn't like he's been the golden child. If you look at a lot of guys' coaching careers, and you'll find them, okay, they played, they were a student assistant, a graduate assistant, they got a full-time job, they became a coordinator, they moved up, and now here they are. All right? At no point along the way did they have to deal with, serious career adversity. Maybe they dealt with personal adversity. They didn't have to deal with, a 0 for 11 season or a head coach who got fired. Well, Jimmy got fired. He was out of football for a year out of Tampa Bay. And so here's a guy who had, he coached for 1 year with Gilbertson at the University of Washington, then got a chance to go into the NFL as an assistant secondary coach with Raheem, and then they got fired. And he was out of coaching for a year, back in the financial world, and then all of a sudden he gets a chance to go back into coaching at Boise State, and now he's the Huskies head man. So not a storybook ending and not a storybook career, but certainly a study in perseverance.
Mike Kramer joining us as Tootell Nuanez, talking to us about Jimmy Lake, who he coached coming out of high school at Eastern Washington, who is soon to be, after this bowl game, the head coach at the University of Washington.
Looking at his resume, Coach, he was an All-Big Sky guy as a player, but also a team captain, academic all-conference. Those things usually lend themselves to a successful launching point, at least for a coaching career. But when he was coaching for you initially as a GA back in '99, but then when you circled back around and coached for you at Montana State 2005, did you see head coaching potential in him, or what have you thought just of his rapid rise all the way now to the head coach of the University of Washington?
Well, Filter, I'm not sure whether you can really look at a guy and say he's going to be head coaching timber until they've won a couple games. Jimmy's never had to be that guy in front of the team yet, or face the media after the game and explain why your offense or his defense or his kicking game fell apart. So a lot of how shit and made it work for him. Because as a player, he wasn't the fastest guy. As a coach, he wasn't the most magnetic guy, not just the guy that other guys would gravitate towards. And even go back to it as a player. Let's go back to our college days, all of us, and let's remember, who did the party gravitate around? When Jimmy walked into the room, was he the dude that all the gals wanted to be with and all the guys wanted to be around? Not necessarily. He's not that kind of person. So everything he's gotten through his personality, through his perseverance, through his family, through his faith, through his academics, through his preparation, it's all become, he spent the time and he's just wanted it as badly as anybody. And he's a guy who's never stopped improving. In fact, when he coached for us at Montana State in 2003, we had a really nice run on defense, ended up winning part of the title and going to the playoffs. The next year, he got a chance, to move on and get going into the NFL and do something, or go to Washington and then go into the NFL. So where he was going and who he had talked to and how he got there, that's all because Jimmy could present himself as the kind of guy that you could accept. So, again, where's the battle fought? At the upper tiers of all college athletics, in recruiting, in the living room, this week, next week. Those guys are going to sit on couches. They're going to go into schools. They're going to talk to juniors and sophomores, even though, albeit it's not necessarily legal or illegal, but they're going to make their presence known. So you got to be able to go into a school or go into a house, and you got to be able to assume and assure the parents who can take care of their son. Well, guess what? From the day Jimmy played for us, he took care of my family because every single day he was a great player. He prepared, over-prepared, made himself into not just a great football player, but an excellent student. And he's been a long-time husband, a great father, and he just embodies everything that you really want in the leadership role in intercollegiate athletics at any level.
Mike Kramer joining us talking about Jimmy Lake, who is assuming the surprisingly vacated role of head coach at the University of Washington. The last question for me on this, Coach, is, obviously somewhere along the line, Chris Peterson let the administration know that he was going to make this decision because they made this announcement almost together, that he was leaving and that Jimmy Lake was taking. But there's no interim tag on this thing. There was no coaching search done that we know about from certainly one that was advertised, and they're flying, ADs all over the country and so forth. I mean, that's pretty miraculous, isn't it, at a place like Washington, which is, a top 3 job in the Pac-12 to just go, yep, you're the next one in, done deal, signed, sealed, delivered.
Fellas, I don't know if there's a litmus test or a series of interviews that would explain to you that this guy's going to be the right guy for the job. In fact, in my coaching career, and I've had 3 head coaching jobs, all of them kind of involved an extensive search, behind the scenes, maneuvering, manipulating. And I'm sure this had some of those elements of that. I'm sure that the president of the University of Washington, the athletic director of the University of Washington, they didn't just say, oh, well, Chris, now you want to be done, and here's the guy we're going to hire. No, I'm sure that somehow, somewhere inside of that, they were ready with plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and a go-to plan E. And this is the way it worked out. And, of course, all the notoriety that the University of Washington has gotten over the years, being a CFB playoff team, a Pac-12 championship team, a team that's been in the upper echelons of the national rankings, led by a coach who's known for being a great organizer and a great presenter, Chris Peterson. But also, they reestablished the concept at the University of Washington that they had to play defense. And that has come not just on the back of Jimmy Lake, but, of course, on the shoulders of Pete Kwiatkowski. And Pete, who coached for me at Eastern and then coached with us at Montana State, who brought Jimmy into the staff in 2003 as assistant coach at Montana State, has always been a guy that's been in Jimmy's corner, and Jimmy's maybe been in Pete's corner. So together, those 2 guys are able to assume a mantle of responsibility for a Husky defense that, of course, they got some NFL caliber guys, but also they played within themselves. And, of course, last Saturday, they proved that they didn't necessarily have to do the outlandish or the unbreakable to be able to withstand the onslaught of the best passing team in the United States in the Apple Cup. So a great win by the Huskies, and really an exclamation point to whatever Chris Peterson was thinking about. And whatever the manipulations were behind the scenes, whatever rocks had to be moved, everything got moved into place. And now here's Jimmy's great opportunity. And I'll bet you he is more tightly wound tonight than he was a week ago tonight when he was preparing for the Apple Cup. Because you get up in the morning and brush your teeth, and you're responsible for a lot more than just University of Washington football. In a day and age where intercollegiate athletics continues to be on the rise, especially Division I football, especially the national playoffs, the money involved, there's a lot of resources that you've got to take care of on a given day. And so it's a lifestyle, it's a family issue. I'm sure Michelle, his wife, and all of his children are all excited about it. I couldn't be more proud of him. I'm sure his mom, who's been by his side throughout this whole run from her when Jimmy was just a little kid with his twin brother in Spokane, that they're just doing great and they're ecstatic tonight.
Well, Coach, we love talking all these sorts of things with you, but we'll get you out of here on this. Did you get a chance to watch the rivalry game between the Bobcats and the Grizzlies? If so, what'd you think, and what's your overall take on the FCS playoffs this year?
Well, number one, if the Bobcats can run the ball that well on the road, because you got to be able to go on the road and win the playoffs. Because there's only one team that's going to play home field almost the entire way.
Right. No doubt.
And those guys consider that part of Texas to be home field for them themselves. I like the timber of what the Bobcats are able to do. I think their ability to run the ball repeatedly over and over again, and splashy types of runs, perimeter runs, edge runs, fly motion runs, along with the great defensive front seven that continually harass and harry Grizzly quarterback into not necessarily mistakes, but into ineffectiveness. So that's a really good recipe for success. All four Big Sky teams got a week off. All four Big Sky teams are pretty salty in certain areas, but they're all deadly at home. So I would expect, as a former Big Sky head coach and as a Big Sky fan, and as a guy who's paying attention to all four games, all four teams will serve this weekend. And next week, we'll start talking about one of the elite conferences in the nation advancing in the playoffs.
Coach, always appreciate the time. An absolute blast. And thanks for the insight on the scenario going on in Seattle right now. We appreciate that very much as well.
Oh, I love you guys. You guys do a hell of a job here in the state of Montana. So keep it rolling. There's a lot of interest in college football. I know you guys will stay on top of it. So great to talk with you. And anytime you guys want to get hold of me, get hold of me.
You got it. Thanks, Coach. There you go.
Thanks.
Mike Kramer, the former head coach at Eastern, Idaho State, and Montana State, and keeping his finger on the pulse, obviously.
I mean, how good is that memory?
Yeah,
he just named his whole defensive starting lineup from 25 years ago.
Right.
Amazing.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I
It's
was
pretty
looking
cool.
at Jimmy Lake's Wikipedia. He had every step of that Jimmy Lake made in his career down to the order, as well as he only missed one date even.
Let me tell you something. Being the head coach at Washington, though, is the second best opportunity to get a sight on scene called from a payphone. You're in the cube. Full scholarship for you. Never see you, never talk to you. Full scholarship on testimony. I mean, come on. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, we got to send that interview to one of the Seattle writers so they can work that into a feature. Because, I mean, for real, like the payphone conversation started this entire thing.
Yes.
If Jimmy Lake doesn't talk to Mike Kramer on a payphone, he's probably selling rings for Justin.
Totally. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's remarkable. All right.
You think Mike Kramer's disheartened with the way that college football's changed? Because I think he'd probably want to have hour-long conversations with kids on payphones.
No doubt.
It was up to him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who would? I actually was driving across the state of Washington, and we pulled off to a stop, I think, in Ritzville there. And I walked my children into a payphone. I said, "You guys know what this is? A place where you had to make phone calls from." And just, I mean, mind's blown everywhere. You know, could not believe it. By the way, it was no longer in service. We couldn't actually make the call. It's just the structure and the phone were still there. I don't believe the yellow pages. They're still delivering phone books. I mean, is that a remarkable deal that fire keeps on burning each year?
You got to be coming to it.
I mean, okay. It's Tootell Nuanez 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, we'll take a break, come back, get into the other two homestanding teams from the Big Sky Conference in the FCS playoffs, Sacramento State and Weber State. Take a look at their opponents. And yes, Monday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks and the Minnesota Vikings.
I got
at the top of the hour.
I got a couple thoughts, too, just on, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of head coaching changes in the next week.
Sure.
And they'll all be newsworthy, certainly. But I just think that the ramifications in the state of Montana are a big deal from the University of Washington because there's so much crossover. And Pete Kukowski.
Well, go ahead. We got tell them.
I mean, I just think that I think the only other two jobs that could have vacancies that would affect specifically the Montana schools, but just the Big Sky Conference in general, are maybe Oregon State and Washington State. Other than that, I mean, when Mike Kramer mentioned, Pete Kukowski is actually the most successful person from the Mike Kramer coaching tree.
He's actually surprised. I mean, he's also a quote-unquote defensive coordinator now at Washington. Yeah, so the fact that he wasn't the guy is sort of, again, what boulders were moved behind the scenes, as Coach Kramer said, to have Jimmy Lake be the guy who's taken over. I don't know, but pretty interesting.
I mean, Pete Kukowski, they were lights out on defense at Montana State. Then they were lights out on defense at Boise State. And then they were lights out on defense at Washington. And I don't know. I think what Kramer said was actually interesting. There's some behind the scenes going on back at Washington, because for Jimmy Lake to first become co-defensive coordinator with Pete Kwiatkowski, and then this year become sole defensive coordinator over Pete Kwiatkowski, and then now to be the successor to Chris Peterson. It's just very interesting. I feel like there's more to the story on both sides. I don't think Chris Peterson is done with coaching.
Well, the Chris Peterson thing is stunning. I mean, okay, so first of all, according to the release today, there's nothing to do with any personal situation. There's nothing to do with any coaching situation. It was, the season kind of wore on him for some reason this year as opposed to other seasons. But also he's not resigning. He's taking, apparently an administrative leadership role. Heaven only knows what that means at the University of Washington. And, it does seem like this is like a placeholder until he announces what the next thing is. And perhaps if there is a next thing that Pete Kwiatkowski is on that next thing, with him. And that's why Jimmy Lake's the guy. I don't know. But it's odd. And also it would be, I guess the thing to me is, we heard because Will Kane can talk about nothing but the Dallas Cowboys, although it does make sense because there's Boise State connections with Dallas. But if in the event that Jason Garrett's no longer the head coach at Dallas, that maybe this has been done to get, Chris Peterson. But why would you do that now? There's 4 weeks left in the season. You're going to a bowl game. You're going to coach in that bowl game. I don't understand why you make that announcement. Maybe it's for the sake of Jimmy Lake and his, trying to jumpstart his success in being what will kind of be a quasi head coaching situation as they go into this bowl game this year. I don't know, but it's odd in that respect. Mm-hmm. And maybe it is a thing where, what's more, what's longer, harder, more stressful, whatever, than being a head coach, especially college football coach? I don't know. And maybe it is really like, no, I'm done here because I thought Chris Peterson, he's staying till he's 70. I mean, he's perfect in the Northwest at the flagship school of the entire region. Okay, up there at the University of Washington. He can recruit it. He understands how to do it. He did it at Boise State. He's already been to a college football playoff. Like you said to me today, and I think who's better fit at their school than he is there? I don't know. And so this was stunning to me, really. And maybe it is. Maybe we don't have to read into it so far. Maybe a guy just gets burned out and needs to go away for a while. I don't know.
We'll find out that part of it. I just think that this is going to have shockwaves just for a whole bunch of different reasons. Junior Adams, who's the wide receivers coach at Washington, played at Montana State. The crossover, Jeff Choate came from Washington. Bobby Houck once upon a time coached at the University of Washington. There's just a lot of crossover on both sides of this. And Kane Ione was just a quality control guy, an analyst at Washington. When Lake is making his staff, does he throw a bone to Ione? Does Ione want to leave? I don't know. I think that there's way more direct personal connect. Guys like Byron Hout, D-line coach at Montana State, he played for Chris Peterson at Boise State. So there's just a lot of internal connections that could have ramifications. We'll see.
We'll take a break. Now we'll get into the other teams in the Big Sky Conference still playing football.
You know what's at stake after a car accident? Not only will you have to deal with pushy insurance companies, auto repair shops, endless doctor's appointments, and dozens of unforeseen problems, but also your normal day-to-day life. I'm Coulter here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys, and she knows how hard this can be.
That's right. And with all of that, it can seem tempting to take the quick settlement that the insurance company is offering. But I can tell you from experience that it is not going to be a fair amount. I see it all the time where someone has settled with the insurance company and months later realizes that they still have pain from the accident. And now they're having to pay those bills out of their pocket. I don't want that to happen to anyone.
So what should our listeners do, Catherine?
Give us a call and discuss your situation with an attorney. The call is free and we'll gladly talk about your situation with you. If you have a case that we can help with, you will owe us nothing out of pocket. We actually make the insurance company pay for us to help you.
There you have it. Call the Advocates, 406-640-4444, or go online, MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve the Advocates on your side. Katie O'Keefe's has been a neighborhood favorite in the corner of the Stevens Center for years. But if you haven't been into Katie's lately, come on in and make sure to turn left. Downstairs bar is completely remodeled with one of the biggest, best spaces anywhere in Missoula to watch games, play games, and hang out with all your friends. Katie O'Keefe's is your horse racing simulcast headquarters in Missoula. Come into Katie's and turn left for cribbage, darts, pool, and much, much more. Katie O'Keefe's, where the cocktails are always cold and the people are always friendly. Hey, Colter Nuanez from Tootell, Nuanez. You need a great place for a Christmas gift. I got a spot for you. Aspen Sound in Missoula. They got all the hookups for everything you could possibly need for your vehicles. What are some of the sweet things you got going on down there, Tom?
Thanks, Colter. You know, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto have sure been popular this year for safety and convenience. You can do text messaging, maps, pretty much everything you need, phone calls, music, everything right from the touch of your radio. We also have remote car starters, as you know, and window tint. Lots of goodies at a great price. Come on down and see us.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jelly. As in, oh, I am like so jelly of the beautiful bone.
You don't have to speak English. Thousands of kids across the world love just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Services, Adopt US Kids, and the
ESPN Missoula.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. Two teams from thousands of miles away will make the cross-country trip to Montana this weekend for the FCS playoffs. Take on the Grizz and Bobcats, who are fresh off byes. First, southeastern Louisiana. They're going to travel over 2,200 miles from Hammond to Missoula to take on the number 6 Grizz. Sela rallied from a 17-point deficit to squeak out a 45-44 win over number 8 Villanova in the first round of the FCS playoffs.
The Lions scored 17 points in the third quarter to tie the game at 31, then took the lead for good. 2.5 minutes to go. Earned the school's second ever playoff win. In the program's third ever playoff appearance, first team All-Southland Conference quarterback Chase Vigil threw for 445 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Lions moved to 8-4 this season. Montana 9-3, entering its record 24th playoff appearance.
The University of Albany also travels about 2,400 miles from New York State's capital to Bozeman to play number 5 Montana State. The Great Danes of the Colonial Athletic Association turned a 7-7 halftime tie into a 42-14 drubbing of number 17 Central Connecticut State Saturday.
Albany freshman quarterback Jeff Undercuffler tied an FCS playoff single-game record by throwing 6 touchdowns, including 4 during a 28-point third quarter. Last week marked Albany's first ever playoff win, MSU making their 11th ever playoff appearance.
The Cubs have cut ties with Addison Russell and will not offer him a contract extension for next season. A little personal information for you. Go Cubs. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. This Saturday, their 7th annual snow day, 1 day only. Go there. Going to the game, go early. Get in there early. Get all the things you need off your Christmas list when the getting's good. Saturday at Kurtz Polaris. If you would like to listen live and you are around a computer, you can go onto the web, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen live. The stream is brought to us by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, the second round of the FCS playoffs are set. The 8 seeds have their 8 opponents all set for them. We've talked about Albany going to Montana State. We've talked about southeastern Louisiana going to Missoula. We have not yet talked about Sacramento State and Weber State. Sacramento State, the number 4 seed in these playoffs, they get Austin P, who hammered Furman over, it was like 42-7?
42-6.
42-6 over Furman. So a big win
The
there.
first round was lackluster in a lot of ways, man. Like North Dakota and Southeast Missouri and Furman, I believe, all did not even score a touchdown.
It's not that interesting. And then also Weber State getting the aforementioned Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State 10-2 going into their game last week against Wofford. Beat Wofford. They're now 11-2 on the season, an 11-win Kennesaw State team. So that may be, well, I don't know what that's going to be. It's going to be a long ride for both teams to get to where they're going. What do you think, though? I mean, you already said off the top of the show, look, man, one thing that was affirmed to me is just how much better the Big Sky teams and the Missouri Valley, too, are basically than everybody else in the country when it comes to the FCS. That said, the best team in any given conference, and certainly to get to this point, I mean, Kennesaw State team, you expect to be a pretty good football team rolling in there to Ogden, Utah. And for Austin P, I don't know the first thing about Austin P. I always thought it was Austin, PA. What do I know? But anyway, they're going to Sacramento State. And again, part of the fun of the FCS playoffs is a little bit of the blindness associated with it. That I mean, the teams are on double duty just trying to figure out, well, who in the world is this that we're going against, to say nothing to the fan.
Right. I mean, we're going to talk to Southeastern Louisiana's coach later on this week, and we're going to talk. I mean, we already talked to Greg Gattuso from Albany earlier today.
Yep.
And I think that some of these sort of unknown teams in the bracket, it's so much of what you always talk about. The coach is so essential. Austin P was a non-scholarship FCS team all the way until they joined the Ohio Valley in 2007, and then they just weren't really investing any money in football. And then they hired Mark Hudspeth, who had massive success at North Alabama. We talked about North Alabama's Division II dominance before North Alabama came to Montana to play earlier this year. And then he was at Mississippi State for a couple years, head coach at Louisiana Lafayette for 7 seasons.
Yep.
He's got FBS coaching experience. He's got Division II coaching experience at a high level. And boom, in year one, brings in a great quarterback, and Austin P is all of a sudden really legit. And I think that sometimes when you don't have, we talked about just the omnipresent shadow cast over the Montana football program, which is their own tradition, it's certainly a huge advantage. And it's also, it puts so much pressure on all the situations because you can talk about all the history. And Bobby Hauck has no excuses to not be prepared for a playoff game. This will be his 19th playoff game. He's coaching it on Saturday. Whereas I think the newness of it, which you see with Kennesaw State, which is a program that's only existed for 5 years, and Austin P, a program that's investing money for the first time. Sometimes what you don't know is good. I mean, ignorance is bliss, right? Like, you don't have the pressure of the moment. I mean, they just went and beat Furman, a team that's been in the bracket 16 times. They housed them. I mean, it was no contest. And I thought Furman was going to win that game just because, like you said, I knew next to nothing about Austin P, but you can see just the influence of good coaching on several of these sort of lesser-known teams. And usually when you see a team come out of nowhere or make the playoffs for the first time or win a game for the first time like Albany did, you can tie it to one of two things. A new coach, like we saw last year, Eric Morris, the guy who comes from the Mike Leach coaching tree at Incarnate Word. He led Incarnate Word, who's a pretty new program, to the playoffs for the first time. Or you see it like with a guy like Greg Gattuso, who's been a head coach forever. He was at Duquesne for 12 years, and now he's been at Albany for 6 years. And like he said, he told us on our conference call this morning, we'll play this for you later on in the week, but he said, you can think of it two ways. Either I just turned the corner and became a way better coach in my 20th year as a head coach, or my quarterback is really dang good.
Right. And I can promise you, I didn't change it.
Exactly. Right. So sometimes you just get a special player, and a special player can carry you so far. But as far as these matchups go, I mean, you talk about we had the chair of the FCS playoff committee on the show multiple times, and he talked about the regionality of the seedings.
Yeah.
I mean, they had good intentions, but a lot of these matchups, I mean, Illinois State to Central Arkansas is one of the closer.
Well, man, if you got 4 seeded Big Sky teams, you got nothing but to load up the airplanes. Doesn't matter. I mean, it just doesn't matter where you're coming from.
Right, but like Austin P is in Tennessee, and they got to go to Sac State. That's a long ways.
Hey, Kennesaw to Ogden,
right?
About equal.
Totally. There is a little bit of more of the ease of travel just in the fact that Kennesaw can just go to Atlanta and take a direct flight to Salt Lake City.
Aren't they're all chartered.
Yeah, totally. I'm just talking about this, like the logistics of the airport, though, because even if you're taking a charter, like when Montana State played at Northern Colorado this year, they took a charter to Casper,
whatever airport they could land in.
Wyoming, because that was just a closer way to get to Greeley in terms of the busing situation or something. I don't know the logistics of it all, but it is. You're right. If the Big Sky has 4 seeded teams, it's going to be.
It's going
to be hard to have any
who's
regionality.
around to play? Nobody.
The Southland is the closest cover. Southland and the Missouri Valley, but Big Sky being better in the Missouri Valley, getting some seeds too. Those matchups are once again delayed. But as far as these two matchups go, I have no real take on how Austin P matches up with Sac State. Kevin Thompson was awesome this year, and he's going to be one of the best players in the game no matter what when he's healthy. The other game, though, to me is fascinating because I've downplayed Kennesaw State all year. I thought Kennesaw State looked really tough. I thought that their defense looked really fast, and they've done nothing but win since they got that. I mean, this is their third straight 11-win season, so they know how to win.
Yeah.
So, but on the flip side, who likes playing the triple option and who's licking his lips more than Jay Hill with that defensive line? I mean, bring it on. They've been so good against Cal Poly every year, so they'll be ready to roll. That's going to be a slugfest of a match.
The one thing, it's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, that I think is obvious, but it's still worth noting, worth paying attention to, is, as Mike Kramer told us in the last segment, these teams have all been great all year. They've been completely locked down, blow you away at home.
Right.
And when you got Weber State in Ogden, and when you got Sacramento State in Sacramento, I mean, look out.
2 points there. First of all, the last handful of years, the Montana schools have lost more often at home, and I think people have become numb to the fact that there's no such thing as losing 2 home games in Missoula at Washington Grizzly Stadium ever. Yeah. You might lose 1 home game in the season, but usually not. Is usually undefeated at home. Book it. And Montana State has been good at home under Jeff Choate, but not as dominant as you'd expect a team that's in the top.
Which, by the way,
yes,
it was undefeated at Montana this year.
No doubt.
Right.
Montana, and that's how it always, you could always book. That's why it was so crazy when Montana started missing the playoffs, because it used to just be,
well, you got 5 or 6 wins.
You're going to get 5 wins at home, bare min, and maybe if the Bobcats come and beat you, okay, but you're still 5-1 before you even play a road game. All you got to do is trip your way to 2-3.
Yeah,
and go on the playoffs.
Right.
But that somehow went by the wayside until now this year. The only home game lost by either of the two schools was when Sacramento State came to Bozeman and won. Other than that, teams were flat dominant at home. They destroyed people at home. Both sides did. So that's worth pointing out. Other thing that is really, really, really interesting. I always wondered if Sac State ever truly got it rolling, would it fall on deaf ears in the community, or could they get a little bit of cult support? Could they get their own little crowd? Because you're talking about a metropolitan area that's just gigantic. Could they just get anybody to come to their games? They had 20,000 people at their game against UC Davis. Second largest crowd in Sacramento State history. The largest crowd to ever watch a Division I game at Sac State history. I mean, I know it's a rivalry game, the Causeway Classic, but I mean, even if you're getting 15,000, you are drawing twice what you used to draw for Sac State, and that's cool, man. And that could give them a real deal home field advantage, because that stadium, it looks so strange because it's got the track on the outside of the grass. It's actually a 23,000 seat venue, but it's one of the premier track venues in the country. It looks so dumb when there's 6,000 people there, but I would love to see that venue with 20,000 people. That would be cool.
By the way, quickly at Albany this past weekend, would you like to take a guess at how many people came to watch the playoff game?
1,660.
1,660. By far the lowest attendance in Casey Stadium history, Casey, where they play, which is, of course, lowest of all the season, and we know what it is on Thanksgiving and the whole deal. But a playoff game, you got 1,600.
Yeah, this is why we talked to Tom Miller from the Grand Forks Herald last week, but I wanted more revelations about the bids.
Yeah.
Because Nichols State was the only game that had more than 7,000 people at it. Every other game had less than 4,000 people. I added it up. The cumulative attendance of the first round of the FCS playoffs was 28,000 and change. You might have that many. I don't think that they're going to have that many, but you could have close to that at Montana alone on Saturday, and you will certainly nearly double that just with the 2 Montana schools this weekend. So what I'm saying, though, is that there's no way that North Dakota wouldn't have got, I'm not saying they would have been the number one, but North Dakota would have had 7,000 or 8,000 people there. They wouldn't have had 3,500.
No doubt.
They got outbid by the only other school that did draw better, but like step up your game, Villanova. Step up your game. Anybody. I mean, 1,660 fans. That's
crazy.
That's like a Class B game in Montana.
Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, Seahawks, Vikings, Monday Night Football. Let's get into this game. Get you set for kickoff right here on ESPN Radio right after this. Hey, right now, you need to get your car cleaned. Why do I know? Because it's dirty. How do I know? Because you're here in Montana listening to me. Your car is dirty. It's just a fact. Go to Shine Auto Detailing. Shine Auto Detailing. Get your car cleaned. Why? When it's just going to get dirty again? Well, because you can protect it too. They have a great ceramic coating they can put on there. It makes all the chips, all the rocks, all the sand that gets put down impervious. Your car is impervious to that stuff. Okay? Then when you go to wash it again, you got a perfect, brand new, clean car again. Okay? Protect your car and make it look great. And hey, get half off headlamp restoration while you're at it. Make your appointment today online, MissoulaAutoDetailing.com, and get your Shine Auto Detailing appointment locked in. Easy pricing to see online as well. Do it right now. Protect your car this winter.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Thank you for making Polaris America's best-selling off-road brand. During the Polaris Great American Thank You event, financing is as low as 3.99%, and rebates go as high as $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance racer. Tackle everything from mountains to mudholes, a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or elevate your adventure in a versatile Polaris General. Now is the time to get the season's best deals on America's best-selling off-road lineup with financing as low as 2.99%, APR for 36 months, and rebates up to $3,500 during the Polaris Great American Thank You at Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Get the Kurtz Polaris on Saturday, December 7th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for Kurt's 7th annual snow day. This is the biggest sale of the year, one day only, Saturday, December 7th at Kurtz Polaris in Missoula. Kurt's 7th annual snow day. Rebates valid in U.S. through 12/31/19 on new 2020 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and drive.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. The 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit B6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of gas by idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting your
vehicle exhaust, smog, climate change, poor air quality, making the as much fun. Kids and seniors are especially vulnerable to these filters.
So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Brought to you by Missoula in Motion.
on a Sunday that saw 2 one-loss teams lose. What will we see on Monday? It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And this Saturday, it's their 7th annual snow day. The biggest sale of the entire year, born on one day only. Kurtz Polaris. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Tootell and Nuanez, we're out there for you, boys and girls. Listening on the podcast, available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel.
This Chris Peterson story is just so interesting, but I want to read one quote. This is the best quote I've heard on this so far. This is from Brock Heward, who's actually been on this show twice, actually. Yeah, I think. Anyways, former UW quarterback who's now Fox analyst, and he
is the play-by-play guy Damon Heward is who's Brock's brother does the play-by-play or the color call, for the Washington Huskies. So they're very tied in, obviously, to the Huskies. Brock played at Washington.
One of their two sons,
lives in Seattle.
Of the two of them has a son that's going to be the next Golden Boy quarterback there. Regardless, Brock Heward said, doing this job that I do and getting to see the shortcuts that others take and the amount of rampant cheating in college football, to have a guy that I have full confidence that doesn't play in the gray area and really is willing to live in the black and white, even if it's costly to some recruiting battles, it's very, very commendable and something that I'm very, very proud of as a Husky alum. But I do think that eventually playing by the rules, and I don't mind this being on the record, playing by the rules truly takes its toll. That's the direction college football is going over the long term. I just don't think that Coach Peterson was willing and wanting to play that game. So maybe it is as simple as the John Beilein situation. Like John Beilein said basically that when he went from Michigan to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He said, I am not willing to do the crazy one-and-done brokering of players. I want to develop guys, and ironically, I might have a chance to develop guys better in the pros than I do in college.
Yeah. Well, interesting. There's certainly plenty more coming out on that. We keep it in Seattle, though, as the Seattle Seahawks are hosting the Minnesota Vikings. I saw this line at 2.5. I'm now seeing 3 right in that zone, which means that as a home game for Seattle, this is a pick'em game in terms of who's the quote-unquote better team. The Seahawks are 9-2. Are you ready for this, Coulter? They're 3-2 at home. They're 6-0 on the road.
I saw that the last time I interviewed our guy, Mike Dugar.
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating
surprising.
Well.
And
they
really
play better teams at home has been part of it.
No doubt. They certainly have played better teams at home, but they played and won in San Francisco. In that crazy overtime game, and they've gone this is a team that historically has not traveled well, but they've gone to Pittsburgh and won this year. Where else? I forget where else they went, but this is a team who's had one of, if not the best, home field advantage in the NFL for a long time, and for them to be 3-2 at home is a bit of a surprise. And yet another very good team, and I will give you credit, in the Minnesota Vikings. Coming in here 8-3, they're 5-0 at home and 3-3 on the road, which maybe makes a little bit more sense. The Vikings are, but this is going to be a great game. And now everybody's got 2 losses, right? 2 losses or more in the NFL, with the loss by the Patriots and by the San Francisco 49ers. So the battle for supremacy, by the way, both conferences accounted for there, is big time, and these are 100% 2 of the expected playoff teams in the NFC. I mean, Minnesota's in a battle, obviously, right now with Green Bay. Seattle's in a battle with the San Francisco 49ers for the top in their division, but also it's developing very much like no matter what team wins or doesn't win the division, those are going to be the 2 wild card teams, the 2 second-place teams in those divisions, because New Orleans has it sewn up and nobody's coming close in the NFC South. And in the NFC East, nobody from the whole division should even make the playoffs. I mean, it should just be all over. So you are the only other team to me that looks like it has even maybe a remote chance is the Los Angeles Rams. If they can figure it out and get hot down the stretch, they could challenge for that second wild card spot potentially. But this is a big game, obviously, for the divisional standings for both of these teams, because you got to keep pace with the team ahead of you. Green Bay winning yesterday for Minnesota, and then an opening now with the loss for San Francisco in kind of opening the door a little bit for the Seattle Seahawks.
this is the time of year where sometimes you have these huge games and they're wars, just like the 49ers and the Ravens were yesterday. Also, sometimes that you have these crazy lulls. Like the Ravens destroyed the Texans last week.
Right.
And then the Texans destroyed the Patriots last night.
Beat them soundly. Don't look at the score. I mean, Patriots scored late, but yeah, it was remarkable how handily Houston, of all teams, handled the New England Patriots last night.
So sometimes you have just ebbs and flows this time of year, but also sometimes you have these primetime matchups, and sometimes I think you have hangovers after the primetime matchups. Sometimes I think, like a team like the Texans, it seemed like they really wanted to bounce back hard after not playing very well for a couple of weeks. They showed what kind of threat they can be last night. So, but tonight I expect both these teams to definitely be up for this game. This is a huge litmus test game for me because, to me, no one in the NFC has really differentiated themselves outside of the Niners. And I truly believe the Niners are great now. I mean, because the Niners are so good up front on defense. I mean, their D-line is silly.
They're an outstanding football team.
I mean, they're absurd on defense.
And really well coached, man. I mean,
they are.
I think Kyle Shanahan.
They are. They're doing such creative stuff, honestly. I mean, the 4 running back system is crazy. The 4 play with your hair on fire D linemen look that they're one of the best pass rushing teams of the decade, and this is the last year of the decade. But and I think the Saints have a chance to be right there. To me, though, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Seahawks are all have established themselves as good.
They're in the tier, but where are they amongst each other? Right?
I want to see a statement from one of them.
Yeah. This is going to be a fun game tonight because you have Russell Wilson, who, by the way, is 63 yards away from 3,000 yards passing already. This is 11 games in. He's at 3,000 yards, basically, on the season, which is crazy. 24 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, Coulter. How does that grab you? Pretty great. Dalvin Cook, he's 11 games in, too. He's already passed 1,000. 1,017 yards for Dalvin Cook, and hello, where it matters. This is the thing. Chris Carson, he's been really good, and they've been a little bit of a 2 running back system in Seattle. 879 yards, which is outstanding. 4 touchdowns, though, for Chris Carson. 11 for Dalvin Cook. I mean, he just goes to the house. And frankly, the Seattle defense, they're not as good just person to person as the Minnesota defense is.
Seattle defense isn't good, period.
No. That is false.
I mean,
but
look
they
at the stats, man. They're not very good. They're bottom half of the league in almost every statistical category.
Let me look at the stats. 9-2.
Mike Dugar has been writing weekly articles for The Athletic about how bad they've been struggling on.
Struggling? Indeed. Not up to their own standards? Indeed. Not bad. Not bad in the sense of full stop bad.
Minnesota has one of the 4 best defenses in the league.
They have a very good defense. I don't know if it's 4 best, but it's top 7.
Who's better? Patriots, Bills? Oh, wait.
San Francisco.
Okay.
Cleveland.
Stop.
But they're very good. This is a really good defense with a really good run game against a great passing. Well, really great offense in general, but especially a passing offense against a defense that has a lot to prove and is going to have to figure it out. And also, Kirk Cousins has been, I forget who's good and bad, but Dr. Jekyll, the bad one, at the front end of the season, and Mr. Hyde, the good one, in the second half of the season. And he had his month of November or October was just absolutely
highest quarterback rating for a single month in NFL history.
Stunning. It was absolutely unbelievable. He's come back from that a little bit the last couple of weeks, but if he can put together a solid performance tonight, that's going to go a long ways. But you have by far the better quarterback and passing game. Well, certainly better quarterback against certainly the better defense. But it's a home game for Seattle and one that they need. And is this right? Is Russell Wilson undefeated in primetime games? I gotta check this out. Not playoff
how many
games.
times has Kirk Cousins won in primetime? Once.
I mean,
last time they played the Cowboys. I mean, I'm serious. I don't know if he's ever won a primetime.
All right, Coulter. Well, let's finish up then. -3. Call it -3 for the Seattle Seahawks.
Be able to run the ball at will.
Okie dokie. I look forward to this. I will take the Seattle Seahawks. We will discuss what it is that you're paying me and how that
you don't
will
get
be
anything
delivered.
from this.
How that will
You're already
delivered.
ditching me to watch the game. So
I'm not
you're
ditching you. I'm going home. There's a difference.
Well, we already had these plans. You're home.
I've never. Tina, let me know. Can I go with Coulter?
No, she said
let
no.
me know. All right,
Tomorrow
boys
we'll
and
debate
girls.
Russell Wilson or Lamar Jackson MVP because I love that question.
Right now, Seattle, Washington, Hawks, Vikings on ESPN Radio.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Down pump, ooh, pump it up.
Whether you need energy to get you going or a little relaxation to wind you down, Town Pump has it. Red Bull Energy 12-ounce, 3 for $7. And Keystone 15-pack, $8.88. There's a Town Pump right down the road from you.